The anomaly appeared without warning. No energy spike registered across the dimensional membranes. No hostile intent flickered through the cosmic sensors that monitored the 52 universes of the DC multiverse. The detection grid, designed to catch everything from invading gods to temporal fractures, logged the event with clinical precision, passive signature, non-aggressive classification, 0 threat index. The monitors made a note in their eternal records and moved on. After all, the multiverse breathed constantly. Anomalies were expected. This one didn't demand immediate attention. That assumption would prove catastrophic, though not in any way the monitors could have predicted. The figure that materialized in what would later be designated as Earth Prime stood in an empty field outside Metropolis. A young man unremarkable by any cosmic standard. Dark hair, plain features, the kind of face that would disappear in any crowd. He wore casual clothes, a school uniform that belonged to no institution in this universe, and carried a backpack slung over one shoulder. Yogiri Takatou looked around at the unfamiliar landscape, sighed, and wondered how he was going to get home this time. He didn't radiate power. No aura distorted the air around him. No divine presence announced itself to the magical currents that flowed beneath reality. To every scanning system in the Justice League watchtower, to every mystical ward protecting Earth's heroes, to every cosmic awareness monitoring the planet, he was simply there. Present. Nothing more. The complete absence of threat markers was itself unusual, but not unprecedented. Civilians phased between dimensions occasionally. Lost travelers, victims of experimental technology. The protocols were clear: observe, classify, respond proportionally. Superman was the first to notice, though notice wasn't quite the right word. He'd been flying over Metropolis when something made him pause mid-flight. Not a sound, not a visual cue. Something deeper. Something that bypassed his enhanced senses entirely and went straight to the part of him that had survived countless cosmic threats. His Kryptonian biology registered it as a warning. Not danger exactly. More like a boundary, a line his instincts insisted he should not cross. He hovered there for a moment, scanning the area with X-ray vision, infrared, the full spectrum of perceptions available to him. The boy in the field registered as completely normal. Human biology, elevated heart rate, consistent with confusion or mild stress, no weapons, no concealed technology. Nothing that would explain the cold certainty settling into Superman's chest. Approaching this person would be a mistake. In the watchtower, automated systems flagged the hesitation. Superman stopping mid-patrol without visible cause warranted investigation. The Flash arrived first, as he usually did, vibrating into the monitoring station with characteristic energy. "Got a weird one," he said, already pulling up the sensor data. Clark just stopped. Middle of the afternoon, clear skies, no alerts. Batman's voice came through the comm flat and focused. Location: field outside Metropolis. There's a person there. Civilian by all readings. But Superman won't approach. Batman's tone suggested he was already running through possibilities, eliminating scenarios that didn't fit the pattern. Green Lantern materialized in the watchtower through a construct portal, his ring already scanning the situation. The emerald light flickered across holographic displays, processing data at speeds that would overwhelm human comprehension. "Ring's getting something weird," he reported. Not a threat classification, more like an absence. The usual parameters don't apply. "Explain," Batman said. "I can't. The ring scans by imposing structure, right? Energy signatures, power levels, intent markers. This person the structure won't take. like trying to build on ground that isn't there. The flash was already moving his perception, accelerating until the world around him slowed to frozen images. Time travel wasn't the goal, just a quick scan of the temporal possibilities, the branching futures that his connection to the Speed Force let him glimpse. He came back to normal speed with a frown. "That's new," he said quietly. "What did you see?" Batman's question came sharp. "Nothing. The timeline around him is... I don't know how to describe it. It's like he's not part of the flow. I can see futures where we talk to him, futures where we don't, but they all kind of slide off. The Speed Force can't get traction." In the field, Yogiri had found a rock to sit on. He looked tired, not from exertion, but from the specific exhaustion that came from dealing with yet another inexplicable situation. This wasn't the first time he'd been yanked out of his normal life and dropped somewhere that made no sense. It probably wouldn't be the last. He just wanted to go home, take a nap, maybe finish his homework if the teachers were still accepting late assignments after interdimensional kidnapping. Superman descended slowly, keeping distance, landing 100 feet away. Close enough to communicate. Far enough to honor the instinct screaming at him to maintain separation. "Are you lost?" Superman's voice carried easily across the space between them, calm and reassuring. The voice of someone who helped people who could be trusted. Yogiri looked up. For a moment their eyes met. Superman saw nothing hostile there. No malice, no threat, no cosmic awareness judging his worthiness. Just a tired kid who'd seen too many impossible things and was fresh out of surprise. "Yeah," Yogiri said. "This happens sometimes. We can help you get home. Do you know where you're from?" "Different universe, probably. Maybe different reality entirely. It's hard to keep track." Superman's enhanced hearing caught the resignation in those words. This wasn't bravado or confusion. This was experience speaking. Routine even. "What's your name?" "Yogiri Takatou." The name meant nothing to Superman's vast database of knowledge. No historical records, no dimensional registries, no villain files or hero archives. Just a name attached to a person who shouldn't trigger every survival instinct Superman possessed. "I'm Superman. You're on Earth, though probably not the Earth you're familiar with. We have resources to help dimensional travelers. If you'll come with me..." "I'd rather not." The refusal was polite, but absolute. Not the hesitation of someone scared of authority or the defiance of someone testing limits. Simply a statement of preference. Superman felt that instinct sharpen. Don't push, don't insist. Don't make this an imposition. "Understood," he said, and meant it. "Can you tell me how you arrived here?" Yogiri shrugged. "Someone probably tried to kill me or transport me somewhere dangerous. It doesn't always work out the way they plan." The casual mention of assassination attempts should have prompted more questions. But Superman found himself unwilling to press. Every part of his training, his experience, his fundamental nature as a protector, insisted he should investigate, should ensure this person's safety, should understand the threat. But beneath all that, older and more certain, his Kryptonian survival instincts whispered, "This is not a person who needs protection." In the watchtower, Batman reviewed the footage, the sensor data of Superman's biometric readings. Elevated stress markers, heightened alertness. The physiological signatures of someone facing a significant threat, despite no threat being present. "Pull him back," Batman said. "Maintain observation, but no direct contact." "Are we sure that's necessary?" Wonder Woman had joined the monitoring, her warrior's instincts engaged. "He's just standing there." "Exactly," Batman said. Superman's instincts are usually reliable. If they're telling him to keep distance from what appears to be an unarmed civilian, I'm inclined to listen. Green Lantern frowned at his ring. I'm getting error codes I've never seen before. The ring's trying to classify him and just can't. Not won't. Can't. The categories don't apply. What happens if we try to contain him? Wonder Diana asked. Unknown, Batman said, and I'm not eager to find out. Not yet. In the field, Superman nodded slowly. I'll have some people monitor the situation. Make sure you're safe while we figure out how to help you get home. Is that acceptable? Sure, Yogiri said. He didn't sound concerned about being watched. Didn't sound concerned about much of anything, really. Superman lifted off, maintaining distance awareness, prickling across his skin, until he'd cleared a mile of airspace. Only then did the pressure ease that sense of standing at the edge of something vast and patient, receding to manageable levels. What's the call? Flash asked, when Superman returned to the watchtower. We observe. We don't engage unless he requests help or becomes a verified threat. And if he is a threat? Wonder Woman's hand hadn't moved toward her lasso, but the readiness was there. Superman considered the question, considered the boy sitting on a rock in a field, looking at the sky like he'd seen it all before. Then we're already in trouble, he said quietly. The monitors logged the incident. Passive anomaly, non-aggressive, no action required beyond standard observation protocols. In the deeper systems where cosmic awareness touched the edges of omniscience, a different kind of notation appeared. The monitors, ageless and experienced beyond mortal comprehension, made their assessment with the certainty of beings who had witnessed the birth and death of universes. Classification, indeterminate. Standard frameworks do not apply. Escalation potential unknown. Recommendation, observe. Do not provoke. Do not assume. Far from Earth in the rock of eternity, where order and chaos maintained their endless balance, Nabu stirred within the helm of fate. Something had entered the sphere of his awareness, something that defied the patterns of destiny he'd tracked for millennia. Not evil, not destructive, not even particularly noteworthy by magical standards. Simply present in a way that destiny itself seemed to accommodate rather than direct. Concerning. In an empty field outside Metropolis, Yogiri pulled out his phone, confirmed it had no signal in this universe, and put it away with the practiced patience of someone who'd learned that frustration solved nothing. He'd wait. Someone would eventually figure out how to send him home, or he'd stumble into another incident that would bounce him back to his own reality. It usually worked out. Until then, he'd sit here, enjoy the quiet, and hope nothing tried to kill him. That always complicated things. The sun moved across an unfamiliar sky. The watchtower maintained its vigil. And in the spaces between where power and authority held dominion over reality itself, the careful attention of cosmic forces began to turn toward a question they couldn't quite answer. What exactly had just arrived, and more importantly, what were they supposed to do about it? The day wore on. The anomaly didn't move, and in the absence of clear threat or immediate danger, the protocols held. Observe, classify, understand. It was a reasonable approach. Measured, responsible. It wouldn't be enough. But that realization still lay ahead, waiting for the moment when observation would escalate to interaction, and interaction would reveal the fundamental problem with trying to measure something that existed outside measurement itself. For now, the systems watched. The heroes maintained distance, and Yogiri sat in his field patient and calm, waiting for the universe to sort itself out. He was used to waiting. He was very good at it. End Act 1. Word count 1. 847 words. 3 days passed. Yogiri remained in the field occasionally, walking to the nearby convenience store. When he needed food, returning to his spot without incident. The Justice League maintained their surveillance sensors, tracking his every movement, finding nothing that explained Superman's continued reluctance to approach. Batman had compiled a profile based on observation. Subject appeared human mid-teens, no visible enhancements or technology. Exhibited patience inconsistent with his apparent age. Made no attempt to explore, investigate, or contact anyone beyond brief interactions with store clerks. Purchases included water instant noodles and a deck of cards. The deck of cards particularly bothered Batman. It suggested someone settling in for a wait, someone who'd done this before and knew the routine. "We can't leave him out there indefinitely," Wonder Woman said during the third daily briefing. "If he's truly lost, we have a responsibility to help. If he's a threat, we need to verify that." "Agreed," Superman said, though his tone carried weight. "But carefully. I know how this sounds, but my instincts haven't been wrong yet." Green Lantern pulled up the latest ring analysis. The error codes had evolved, becoming more complex, as the ring attempted different classification approaches. Each attempt returned the same essential result. Subject does not conform to available parameters. "The Guardians sent a query," he reported. "They have never seen a classification failure like this. They want to know if we need support." "Tell them we're handling it," Batman said. "For now." Flash had been running perimeter checks, mapping the area's temporal signature, looking for anything unusual. He'd found minor fluctuations, the kind that accompanied dimensional breaches, but nothing active. Just residue from Yogiri's arrival. "I could try talking to him," Flash offered. "I'm fast enough to retreat if something goes wrong." "Define wrong," Batman said. Flash paused. "That's the problem, isn't it? We don't know what wrong looks like here. No threat profile, no attack pattern, no hostile indicators. Just a kid sitting in a field who makes Superman nervous." "Not nervous," Superman corrected. "Cautious." "There's a difference." Wonder Woman stood. "Then I'll approach. My divine nature may perceive what technology cannot." She didn't wait for approval, simply walked to the teleporter. Superman moved to follow, stopped. The same instinct that had kept him distant flared stronger. Not warning him away from Wonder Woman, but warning him that this escalation mattered. Diana materialized a respectful distance from Yogiri, who looked up from his card game of solitaire laid out on the grass. He'd been in the middle of a difficult pattern, trying to work out if the game was still winnable. "Yogiri Takatou," she said, her voice carrying the formal courtesy of someone who'd negotiated with gods and monsters. "I am Diana of the Themyscira. My friends call me Wonder Woman." "Hi," Yogiri said. He didn't stand, didn't interrupt his card game. Not rude exactly, just treating this like any other conversation. Diana's combat instincts, honed over centuries, whispered the same warning Superman had felt. This person should not be engaged carelessly. But unlike Superman, her divine heritage gave her additional perception. She could sense the blessing or curse of the gods, could feel the weight of destiny and fate. She felt nothing from Yogiri, not absence of power, but something stranger, like looking at a point where all those forces simply decline to operate. "We've been observing you," Diana continued. "You've been here 3 days. You must have questions." "A few," Yogiri admitted, placing a red 7 on a black 8. "But they usually answer themselves eventually. Someone will either figure out how to send me back, or something will happen that makes going back automatic." "You speak as though interdimensional displacement is routine for you." "It happens. He drew another card, frowned at it. People keep trying to solve their problems by getting rid of me. Different methods, different places. I've learned to just wait it out. Diana's hand moved unconsciously toward the lasso of truth at her hip, stopped. Some instinct deeper than training insisted that compelling truth from this person would be unwise. Not because he'd resist, because the action itself would constitute imposition. An imposition her warrior's sense warned would be interpreted as threat. "Are you in danger?" she asked instead. Yogiri looked up, met her eyes. In her long life, Diana had faced beings of immense power. Gods who could reshape reality, monsters who fed on fear, cosmic entities for whom human concerns were less than dust. She'd learned to read power in a glance, to assess threat before the first blow landed. She saw none of that in Yogiri's eyes. Just a teenager tired of being displaced, waiting patiently for the universe to correct itself. And yet, "Not right now," Yogiri said. "As long as nobody tries anything, I should be fine." The phrasing struck her. Not "I'm safe" or "I can defend myself," simply a conditional statement. As long as nobody tries anything. And if someone does try something, Yogiri returned to his card game. Then it usually resolves itself pretty quickly. In the watchtower, Batman replayed that exchange 3 times, analyzing tone, body language, word choice. The threat was there implicit, but unmistakable. Not a boast, not a warning, just a statement of observed pattern. Flash leaned over his shoulder. "He sounds like he's talking about the weather." "That's what concerns me," Batman said. "No emotional investment, no fear of retaliation. Someone that calm about potential conflict either has overwhelming power or has survived situations that taught them fear is unnecessary." "Could be bluffing," Green Lantern offered, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. "Diana," Superman's voice came through the comm. "Your assessment." Wonder Woman stepped back slowly, maintaining the respectful distance. "He's not hostile, but he's also not accessible. It's as if he exists on a different frequency. My divine senses can't find purchase." "Like Green Lantern's ring? And Flash's temporal perception?" "Yes." Diana turned back to Yogiri. "We truly do wish to help you, but we need to understand what we're dealing with. Would you consent to some non-invasive scans?" Yogiri considered this. "Will it speed things up?" "It might help us identify your universe of origin, yes." "Okay." The simplicity of that agreement somehow made it worse. No negotiation, no questions about what the scans would entail, no concern about privacy or safety. Just casual acceptance, as if being scanned by unknown technology in an unfamiliar universe was perfectly normal. Green Lantern's ring flared to life, emerald constructs forming around Yogiri in complex geometric patterns. The ring's AI dedicated full processing power to the task running every classification protocol in the Guardian database. Biological scan, human baseline, minor fatigue, slight dehydration. Nothing unusual. Energy signature, none detected above ambient background. Power source, none identified. Threat assessment, error. Parameters, insufficient. Magical resonance, null. Temporal anchor, unstable. Reading inconsistent, dimensional origin. Multiple conflicting signatures. Green Lantern watched the data stream across his vision, watched his ring try and fail to make sense of what should have been simple readings. The ring was designed to measure anything from atom to universe. It had classified Guardians' new gods, even the emotional entities themselves. It couldn't classify Yogiri Takatou. Ring, he said quietly. Give me a threat assessment using alternate parameters. Assume current protocols are insufficient. The ring pulsed. Specify alternate parameters. Assume subject exists outside standard cosmological framework. Assess threat based on, I don't know, absence, incompatibility, whatever lets you return something useful. The ring hummed processing. Then warning, classification attempted using non-standard metrics, accuracy not guaranteed. Subject does not register as threat. Subject registers as termination condition. Elaboration unavailable. Recommend extreme caution. Green Lantern's hand dropped. Diana stepped back. Now. She did without question. Warriors learned to trust each other's instincts. Flash was already vibrating at high frequency, ready to evacuate everyone in the area at light speed if needed. Superman rose from the watchtower ready to intervene. Batman's fingers hovered over the emergency protocols. Yogiri looked up from his cards, slightly puzzled by the sudden tension. Something wrong. The ring says you're a termination condition, Green Lantern said, keeping his voice steady. I need you to explain what that means. Yogiri thought about it. I don't know. I'm just me. You said people try to get rid of you. Why? Because I make them uncomfortable usually, or they think I'm dangerous. He paused. They're not completely wrong, I guess, but only if they try something. There it was again, that conditional, that line that shouldn't be crossed. Flash spoke up, his perception accelerated so he could monitor every microsecond. What happens if they try something? They die, Yogiri said simply. Most of the time, instantly. Sometimes it takes a second or two if they're really powerful or have complicated existences. The casual tone of that statement hit harder than any threat could have. He wasn't boasting, wasn't trying to intimidate, just explaining a basic fact about his existence, the same way someone might explain they had brown hair or liked pizza. Superman arrived, landing between Yogiri and the others, not threatening, but present, ready. Yogiri, he said carefully. Are you saying you kill people? Only if they're trying to kill me first, or attacking someone I care about, or... He trailed off thinking. Actually, there are a lot of conditions. But the basic rule is, if something's a threat, it dies. Define threat. Batman's voice came through the comm transmitted to the field, so Yogiri could hear. Anything trying to hurt me or people near me. Anything trying to control me. Sometimes just things being dangerous in general if I think they might cause problems. Yogiri shrugged. It's not really up to me. The power just responds. Wonder Woman's eyes narrowed. You have a power that kills automatically in response to threats. Sort of. I mean, I have to recognize something as a threat. But once I do, it just ends. I don't have to do anything specific. Green Lantern's ring pulsed urgently. Subject description matches theoretical existential termination effect. No known defense. Retreat strongly advised. How does it work? Superman asked, his voice still calm, but edged with new understanding. This power of yours. I don't really know the mechanics. Things that threaten me die. That's it. Can you control it? Turn it off. Yogiri looked genuinely uncertain. I've never tried to turn it off. But I control what counts as a threat, if that's what you mean. Like right now, you're all being careful and polite, so nothing's happening. If you tried to attack me or lock me up or something, then... He made a vague gesture. Yeah. The implications settled over the heroes like cold water. They were talking to someone who claimed to possess automatic instant death as a defensive mechanism. Someone who appeared completely human, but registered to their most advanced technology as a fundamental termination condition. Someone who'd been sitting in a field for 3 days, patient and calm, because he knew they couldn't afford to provoke him. Batman's voice cut through the silence. Superman, establish a perimeter. No one approaches within 100 meters. Diana, Green Lantern, withdraw to safe distance. Flash, be ready for evacuation. I'm not going to hurt anyone, Yogiri said, sounding slightly exasperated. You've been watching me for 3 days. Have I done anything threatening? No, Superman admitted. You haven't. But you've just told us you possess a power that kills in response to perceived threats with mechanics you don't fully understand and can't disable. Right. So don't threaten me. Yogiri returned to his card game. I've been saying that the whole time. Wonder Woman's combat training warred with her compassion. This person seemed genuinely non-aggressive, genuinely just wanted to go home. But the power he described, if real, represented an existential danger that couldn't be ignored. We need to verify your claims, she said. You understand that, yes? Sure. But how would you verify it without triggering it? Yogiri placed another card. That's sort of the problem, isn't it? Flash, still vibrating at high frequency, monitoring the probability streams of the immediate future, saw something that made him go still. Every future where they attempted to contain Yogiri, every scenario where they tried to force verification led to the same point. A point where the futures simply stopped. Not branched into death or disaster. Just stopped as if the possibility of continuation had been removed entirely. We've got a problem, he said quietly. A big one. Superman's enhanced hearing caught the tremor in Flash's voice. In all their years working together, he'd rarely heard Flash sound afraid. Talk to me, Superman said. The futures where we try anything forceful. They don't exist. Not that they end badly, they just aren't there. Like the timeline refuses to process what comes next. Batman had been running his own calculations, analyzing the tactical situation. They had someone claiming instant kill capability verified by multiple independent systems as existing outside normal classification. Someone patient enough to wait days without aggression, but direct enough to explain the exact conditions under which that patience would end. We're at an impasse, he said. We can't verify his claims without potentially triggering his power. We can't safely contain him. We can't force him to leave. And we can't ignore an existential threat sitting in a field outside Metropolis. I'm not a threat, Yogiri said, not looking up from his cards. I'm just waiting to go home. Green Lantern's ring whispered warnings about approaching termination conditions, about powers that operated beyond physical law, about the need to escalate to higher authorities. Higher authorities. He's right, Green Lantern said slowly. We're not equipped for this. This isn't hero tier. This is something else. Superman understood immediately. You want to bring in mystical support. Dr. Fate has dealt with conceptual threats before. If anyone can analyze this safely, it's him. Diana nodded. Nabu's awareness operates on multiple levels. He might perceive what we cannot. Batman considered the escalation. Bringing in Dr. Fate meant acknowledging the situation exceeded the League's capabilities. It meant moving from physical response to mystical intervention, from measurable threat to metaphysical unknown. It also meant admitting that Superman's initial instinct had been correct. This person, this seemingly ordinary teenager, Sitting in a field playing cards represented something the Justice League couldn't handle alone. "Do it," Batman said. "Contact Dr. Fate. But make it clear this is consultation, not confrontation. We need information, not conflict." In the field, Yogiri drew another card, placed it, and realized the game had become unwinnable 3 moves ago. He gathered the cards, shuffled, started over, waiting. The heroes withdrew to safe distance, maintaining observation. Alert protocols went out. The situation escalated from monitoring to active concern. Somewhere in the Rock of Eternity, Nabu received the summons and began preparing for what the Justice League, with all their power and experience, could not resolve. The test had failed. Not through violence or defeat, but through something more fundamental. The League couldn't interact meaningfully with Yogiri Takatou. Every system designed to measure, classify, and respond to threats returned the same essential message: standard parameters do not apply. And so the escalation began, from heroes to order, from physical law to mystical authority, from attempting to understand Yogiri's power to attempting to understand his existence itself. The boy in the field shuffled his cards again, patient as stone, waiting for the universe to figure itself out. He was very good at waiting. He'd had a lot of practice. End Act 2. Word count 2. 847 words. Dr. Fate arrived not with thunder or dramatic manifestation, but with the quiet certainty of order asserting itself. One moment the space above the field was empty. The next, a figure in gold and blue stood suspended in air, ancient eyes, regarding the situation with the patience of millennia. Nabu had observed the Justice League's efforts through mystical senses, watched their technology fail to classify what should have been simple. He understood their concern. In his thousands of years maintaining the balance between order and chaos, he'd encountered entities that defied conventional measurement. Gods wearing mortal flesh, demons masquerading as angels, cosmic forces pretending at humanity. This felt different. The boy sitting in the field registered to Nabu's awareness as purely human. No divine spark, no demonic taint, no cosmic essence hiding beneath mundane appearance. Just a human teenager, biologically unremarkable, displaying none of the signatures that usually accompanied beings of power. And yet the threads of destiny, those fundamental patterns Nabu had learned to read like text, refused to weave around him. Not severed, not tangled, simply declining to engage as if the boy existed in a space where fate chose not to operate. Troubling. Dr. Fate descended slowly, his movements carrying the weight of ritual and intention. Every gesture meant something in the language of order, every position held significance. He settled to earth 30 meters from Yogiri, maintaining the distance Superman's instinct had established. Yogiri Takatou. Nabu's voice resonated with layers of meaning, speaking simultaneously on multiple planes of existence. I am Nabu, Lord of Order, speaking through my chosen vessel. The Justice League has asked me to investigate your nature. Yogiri looked up from his cards. Okay. The casual acceptance again. No fear of mystical authority. No awe at meeting an entity that predated human civilization. Just simple acknowledgement. Nabu's awareness expanded, touching the fundamental patterns that governed reality. He perceived the world as structure, as laws, operating in harmony as the great architecture of cause and effect that made existence stable and predictable. He began with the gentlest probe, a question posed to the fabric of destiny itself. What path had brought this person here? The answer came back empty. Not blocked. Not hidden. The question simply found no purchase, like asking the color of silence. Nabu tried a different approach. He reached for the boy's future, the branching possibilities that extended from this moment. Every living thing had futures plural and shifting, forming a probability cloud that narrowed towards certainty as choices were made. Yogiri's future existed, but it was strange. The branches didn't narrow naturally. They ended over and over at points where Nabu's perception couldn't follow. Not death, not transformation, just conclusion, as if the universe decided certain paths weren't relevant. In the watchtower, Batman watched through mystical sensors, seeing the flows of power that Dr. Fate commanded. Magical energy sufficient to reshape continents, to bind gods, to rewrite the fundamental laws governing reality. All of it flowing around Yogiri like water around a stone. "Is Fate attacking?" Superman asked, ready to intervene if needed. "No," Batman said, studying the readings. "He's probing, testing, looking for the framework he can use to understand what he's seeing." Wonder Woman stood beside him, her own divine nature letting her perceive echoes of what Nabu experienced. "He's not finding one." Nabu spoke again, his voice carrying formal weight. "You exist in contradiction to the patterns I perceive. You have no destiny I can read, no fate I can trace. This is not concealment. This is fundamental absence." "I don't know what that means," Yogiri said honestly. "It means you should not exist as you do. Every living thing is woven into the tapestry of causality. You appear to stand beside it." Yogiri shrugged. "People tell me stuff like that sometimes. I'm still not sure what I'm supposed to do about it." Nabu's analytical nature processed this. The boy showed no signs of deliberate resistance, no active countermeasures against mystical perception. He simply was in a way that the architecture of order couldn't properly incorporate. "I will attempt a more direct analysis," Nabu said. "This may be uncomfortable. Will it hurt? It should not cause pain. But you may feel observed." "Okay." Nabu gathered his power, drawing on the fundamental authority granted to him as Lord of Order. He reached out, not to attack or constrain, but to define. To place Yogiri within the framework of cosmic law, to assign him a position in the hierarchy of being. This was Nabu's essential function. Order required classification, required everything to have its place and role. Gods in their sphere, mortals in theirs, demons in their designated realm. Everything ordered, everything understood, everything in balance. He wove the spell carefully, a construct of pure law designed to gently encompass Yogiri and reveal his true nature. The magic spiraled outward in geometric perfection patterns that had existed since the first beings learned to shape reality through will and word. The spell touched Yogiri and stopped existing, not dispersed, not countered, not reflected or absorbed. The mystical energy simply ceased, as if the universe had decided that spell was no longer a relevant concept. Nabu pulled back, reformulating. Perhaps too broad an approach. He tried something more specific, a minor working designed only to read intent. Surely that would be acceptable, non-threatening enough to avoid triggering whatever defense the boy possessed. The reading spell formed, reached out, and terminated the instant it made contact. Nabu tried again, a simple divination asking only whether Yogiri meant harm. The most basic question, one that required no imposition, no constraint, just observation. It died before completion. In the watchtower, Green Lantern watched his ring's analysis of the magical working. The spells aren't being destroyed. They're just stopping. Like a computer program that hits a command it can't execute and shuts down. "Can fate escalate?" Flash asked. Batman's expression darkened. "He's about to." Nabu understood the pattern now. Anything he attempted to do to or with Yogiri simply failed to complete. The boy didn't resist. The spells themselves recognized at some fundamental level that they couldn't operate as intended and ceased functioning. This was not defense. This was incompatibility at a level Nabu had never encountered. He decided on a different approach. Rather than trying to analyze Yogiri directly, he would attempt to incorporate him into a larger pattern, create a field of order around the immediate area, establish laws and structure, and observe how Yogiri interacted with that framework. This was more aggressive, but still not an attack. Simply establishing context, creating an environment where the rules were clear and measurable. Nabu raised both hands, speaking words in a language that predated human civilization. The spell built slowly, layer upon layer, establishing a bounded space where order held absolute dominion. Within this space, magic worked with crystalline precision. Destiny flowed in clear channels, cause and effect linked with perfect clarity. The field expanded, encompassing the entire area around Yogiri, invisible but absolute. For a moment it held. Nabu perceived the framework settling into place, defining the space according to principles that had governed reality since its inception. Then the part of the field touching Yogiri began to break down. Not catastrophically, not with violent rejection. The established orders simply declined to apply to him, peeling away like water rolling off glass. The framework remained intact everywhere else, but where it intersected with Yogiri's position, it developed a gap that began to widen. Nabu watched with growing concern as the absence spread. The field wasn't being attacked or corrupted. It was encountering something that order itself accommodated by stepping aside. He tried to reinforce the framework, pouring more power into maintaining the structure. The gap continued to expand, patient and inexorable. Nabu. Kent Nelson's voice spoke within the construct of their shared existence, the human host reasserting himself. This isn't working. You need to stop. I must understand this anomaly. Order requires comprehension. Order also requires knowing when to withdraw. And Kent's decades of experience as Dr. Fate gave him perspective Nabu sometimes lacked. You're not being defeated. You're being categorically declined. There's a difference. Nabu considered this. His power remained absolute within the framework he'd established. The field held everywhere except where it touched Yogiri. The boy hadn't moved, hadn't acted, hadn't done anything except continue existing in that patient, quiet way. And existence itself was making room for him by gently pushing order aside. This is not resistance, Nabu said aloud, speaking the realization as it formed. This is termination of function. In the watchtower, Batman leaned forward. Those were almost the exact words Green Lantern's ring had used. Yogiri looked up. Are you done? Because I think something's wrong with your spell. The spell is functioning perfectly, Nabu said. Everywhere except where you are. Sorry about that. I don't mean to break things. You are not breaking anything. That is what concerns me. Nabu let the field dissolve, the ordered space collapsing back into normal reality. You exist in a state that order cannot process. Not through power or resistance, but through fundamental incompatibility. Is that bad? Nabu considered how to explain concepts that most beings couldn't comprehend. Imagine a language, any language. Now imagine a word that cannot be spoken in that language, not because it's forbidden, but because the sounds required don't exist in that linguistic framework. Okay, You are that word. Order is the language attempting to speak you. The attempt fails not through opposition, but through categorical impossibility. Yogiri thought about this. So what happens now? Now I must decide whether this categorical impossibility represents a threat to the balance I maintain. The Justice League tensed. Superman rose from the watchtower, ready to intervene. Wonder Woman's hand moved toward her lasso. Flash began vibrating, ready for evacuation. Nabu stood silent, his ancient consciousness processing what he'd learned. Order required balance. Balance required understanding threats and responding appropriately. But how did one respond to something that wasn't hostile, wasn't aggressive, but simply existed in a way that order couldn't accommodate? He thought of the Lords of Order, his peers in the cosmic hierarchy. They would demand action. They would insist on containment or banishment, on restoring the framework to its proper function. They would see Yogiri as corruption, as chaos wearing a false face. But Nabu had lived among humans long enough, worked with them closely enough to recognize something they might miss. Yogiri wasn't causing disorder. He was simply present in a space where order chose not to extend. There was a difference, a crucial one. I perceive no hostile intent. Nabu announced, his voice carrying across multiple planes of reality. I perceive no active corruption of order, no deliberate disruption of balance. I perceive only incompatibility. That's it, Green Lantern said. After all that, you're just going to leave him there. What would you have me do? Nabu's question held genuine curiosity. Attack him. I attempted no hostile action, and already my spells refuse to function. Do you imagine offensive magic would fare better? Batman understood immediately. You're saying you can't contain him. I am saying that attempting containment would require imposing structure upon him. Structure which has already demonstrated it cannot operate in his presence. Nabu turned his helmeted gaze back to Yogiri. And if I were to attempt to force that imposition, it would constitute an attack. The implication hung in the air. An attack would trigger the response Yogiri had described, the automatic instant termination of threats. Could you survive it? Superman asked quietly. Nabu's answer came with unusual humility. I do not know, but I am not eager to discover the answer. Wonder Woman stepped forward. Then, what do you recommend? The same recommendation I gave 5,000 years ago, when humanity first encountered forces beyond their comprehension. Nabu regarded the assembled heroes. Leave it alone. Monitor from a distance. Do not provoke. Do not assume you understand simply because you have observed. That's not acceptable, Batman said. He represents an unknown variable in a populated area. Then I offer you a different perspective. Nabu gestured toward Yogiri, who had returned to his card game. For 3 days, that boy has sat peacefully in a field. He has threatened no one, harmed no one, made no demands. He simply exists, waiting patiently for resolution. While possessing a power that kills automatically, Green Lantern pointed out. While possessing a condition that responds to threats, Nabu corrected. There is a difference. One is aggressive. One is reactive. He has given you the parameters, clearly do not threaten him, and nothing happens. Flash shook his head. So we just accept that there's someone out there who can't be analyzed, contained, or predicted. You already accepted Superman, Nabu said. A being who could destroy your civilization if he chose. You accepted me, though I could rewrite the laws of your reality. You work alongside Wonder Woman, who carries the blessing of gods. You accept these things because you trust in their restraint, their character, their choice not to abuse power. That's different, Batman said. We know them. We understand their capabilities and their limits. And you know Yogiri Takatou has shown patience, honesty, and restraint. He answered your questions. He allowed your examinations. He set clear boundaries and has not violated them. Nabu's voice carried weight. Perhaps the question is not whether you can afford to leave him alone, but whether you can afford the consequences of not doing so. The silence stretched. Every hero present knew Nabu was right. They'd been given a clear choice: accept the situation and monitor peacefully, or escalate and face unknown consequences. There must be someone who can analyze this properly, Wonder Woman said. Someone who operates on a level beyond even yours. Nabu's helmet turned toward her. You suggest the Spectre. Judgment is his domain. If anyone can determine the nature of this threat, it would be him. Nabu considered this. The Spectre operated on a higher order of authority than even the Lords of Order. Divine judgment empowered by the presence itself. If anyone could classify and respond to Yogiri appropriately, it would be him. But the thought carried weight. The Spectre was not subtle. Judgment by its nature required authority, required the power to determine guilt and innocence, to pass sentence, to enforce cosmic law, to impose. Are you certain you wish to take this path? Nabu asked. The Spectre does not investigate gently. Superman looked at the readings, at 3 days of peaceful observation, at a boy playing cards in a field. Then he looked at the analysis from Green Lantern's ring, at the futures that simply stopped, at the spells that refused to function. We need to know what we're dealing with, he said finally. If Yogiri is telling the truth, if he's genuinely just waiting to go home, then the Spectre will confirm that. If there's something more dangerous here, something hidden, then we need to know. Nabu inclined his head. Then I will withdraw and make the request. But understand this, you are escalating from order to judgment. From attempting to understand to attempting to determine innocence or guilt. The Spectre may not appreciate the distinction. Noted, Batman said. Dr. Fate rose into the air, the golden aura around him brightening. I will contact him. What happens next is beyond my authority to influence. He vanished, not with dramatic effect, but with a simple cessation of presence, leaving the Justice League to maintain their vigil. In the field, Yogiri finished another game of solitaire. Lost again. He shuffled the cards, started over. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Pretty in an unfamiliar way. Different constellations would come out once it got dark, different stars. He wondered if anyone back home was worried about him. Probably not. This happened often enough that people had learned to just assume he'd turn up eventually. He drew a card, placed it, and settled in to wait. The heroes had escalated from physical to mystical, from attempting measurement to attempting understanding, from heroes to Lords of Order. Now they would escalate again, from order to judgment, from understanding what he was to determining what should be done about it. Yogiri had seen this pattern before. People trying to solve the problem of his existence, trying to find the right authority, the right power, the right approach. It usually didn't work out the way they hoped. But he could wait. He was patient. And patience, he'd learned, was often the only weapon he needed. The stars came out unfamiliar and strange. Yogiri watched them appear one by one, marking constellations he didn't recognize in patterns that meant nothing to him. Just stars. Just light from distant places reaching across impossible distances to touch this moment. He drew another card and continued his game. Waiting, end Act 3. Word, count 3, 247 words. The specter did not arrive. He manifested. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath as the spirit of vengeance stepped into the world, wearing the form of his human host like a coat tailored for mortality. The sky darkened, though no clouds had formed. The wind stopped, though nothing blocked its passage. Even the distant sounds of Metropolis faded, as if the city itself recognized the presence of something that stood beyond its concerns. Jim Corrigan walked across the field toward Yogiri with measured steps, each footfall carrying the weight of divine authority. The specter's green cloak billowed, despite the still air, its fabric seeming to exist in more dimensions than the eye could track. The white emblem on his chest blazed with cold light, a symbol of judgment rendered absolute. Yogiri looked up from his cards as the oppressive presence washed over the area. He'd felt things like this before. Power that announced itself through sheer weight of existence, beings who carried their authority like armor. He went back to his game. In the watchtower, every alarm that could trigger had gone off. The mystical sensors registered power levels that made Dr. Fate's display look like a candle beside a star. Wonder Woman felt her divine blood respond, recognizing something that operated on the same tier as the Olympians, but focused with terrible precision. "Should we evacuate the area?" Flash asked, his voice tight. "It's too late," Batman said, watching the readings climb beyond measurable limits. "If the Spectre decides to act, speed won't save anyone." Superman had already left, placing himself between Metropolis and the field. Not to fight. He couldn't fight the Spectre. But he could bear witness, could ensure that whatever happened next, someone would see and remember. The Spectre stopped 10 meters from Yogiri. When he spoke, his voice carried layers of meaning, echoing with the weight of every judgment ever passed, every sentence ever pronounced. "Yogiri Takatou. I am the Spectre's spirit of vengeance, empowered by the presence to judge the guilty and punish the wicked. You have been brought to my attention as a potential threat to the cosmic order." Yogiri set down his cards carefully. "I'm not wicked. I just want to go home." "That is not for you to determine." The Spectre's eyes blazed with emerald fire. "Judgment requires perspective beyond mortal understanding. I will examine your soul, measure your deeds, and render verdict on your existence." The pronouncement hung in the air like a sentence already passed. The Spectre had judged gods and found them wanting. He had confronted abstract concepts and pronounced them guilty. His authority came from the highest source in DC's cosmology, and his verdicts were absolute. He reached out with senses that perceived guilt, like heat that measured sin with mathematical precision, that could read the complete moral history of any being simply by observing them. His perception touched Yogiri and found nothing to judge. Not innocence, not guilt, not the complex mixture of virtue and vice that characterized every living soul. Simply an absence of the framework that allowed judgment to function. The Spectre pulled back slightly, reformulating his approach. This had happened before with beings who existed outside conventional morality. Abstract entities, cosmic forces, things that predated concepts like right and wrong. But Yogiri wasn't any of those things. He was human, young, mortal. He should have had a soul readable as text, clear in its contents and easy to assess. Instead, the Spectre found himself trying to judge something that the process of judgment couldn't properly engage with. "You resist my sight," the Spectre said, his voice carrying an edge of something that might have been surprise in a less absolute being. "I'm not resisting anything," Yogiri said. "You can look all you want." The Spectre tried again, this time, not looking for guilt, but for threat. His purpose included protecting reality from dangers that existed beyond conventional evil. Entities that might destroy through nature rather than malice. He perceived Yogiri as clearly as possible, examining every aspect of his existence for signs of corruption, chaos, or existential danger. What he found was a tired teenager who wanted to go home. And beneath that surface observation, something else. Something that his divine senses recognized but couldn't properly classify. A condition. A state of being that existed in relationship to threat. The specter understood conditional existence. He himself was conditional in many ways. His power activated in response to evil. His judgment fell upon the guilty. He operated through rules, through defined parameters that gave his infinite power focus and limitation. But Yogiri's condition was different. It wasn't a limitation on power. It was power that existed as pure response, pure consequence with no independent agency. You claim to kill those who threaten you, the specter said. Explain this power. Yogiri sighed. He'd had this conversation several times now. Things that try to hurt me die. I don't do anything specific. It just happens. Automatically. Yeah. Without your conscious will directing it. I have to recognize something as a threat first. But after that, it's automatic. The specter processed this. Automatic death in response to perceived threat. A power that required no activation, no technique, no expenditure of energy. Simply cause and effect compressed to instantaneous resolution. He knew powers like this existed theoretically. The universe sometimes generated absolute responses to absolute problems. But those were usually cosmic forces, fundamental laws, not abilities possessed by individual beings. How many have you killed with this power? The specter asked. Yogiri thought about it. I don't really keep count. A lot, I guess. People try to kill me pretty often. And you feel no guilt over these deaths. They were trying to kill me first. Most of them were trying to kill other people too. Self-defense then. The specter's tone suggested he was categorizing, trying to fit this into frameworks he understood. But you mentioned it responds to control, to imposition. That is broader than self-defense. Yeah. If someone tries to control me, mind control, or magical compulsion, or whatever that counts as a threat. And if someone attempts to imprison you, depends. If I think they're doing it to protect people from me, and they're being reasonable about it, probably nothing happens. If they're doing it to use me or hurt me, or just because they can, then yeah, that's a threat. The specter's eyes narrowed. You claim your power distinguishes between righteous restraint and malicious imprisonment. I distinguish, Yogiri corrected. The power just does what I think it should do. This was the core problem. The power itself had no morality, no judgment, no independent assessment of right and wrong. It simply responded to Yogiri's perception of threat. And Yogiri, for all his apparent patience and reasonableness, was still a human teenager. Fallible. Capable of error. What prevents you from misusing this power? The specter asked. What stops you from perceiving anything inconvenient as a threat and eliminating it? Nothing, I guess. Except that's not how I think. Yogiri met the specter's burning gaze calmly. I don't want to hurt people. I just want to be left alone. Want is not restraint. Want changes with circumstance and emotion. Okay, then I guess nothing's stopping me except me. The honesty of that answer struck harder than defiance would have. Yogiri wasn't claiming to be controlled by cosmic balance or bound by sacred vows. He was simply stating that his own character, was the only limitation on his power. And his character was human, mortal, subject to all the weaknesses and errors that mortality entailed. The Spectre understood the danger now. Not malice, not evil intent, but absolute power resting on the judgment of someone who, by cosmic standards, barely understood the implications of his own existence. "I could remove you," the Spectre said quietly. "Send you beyond reality itself, to a place where your power cannot threaten this universe." "That would be trying to imprison me," Yogiri pointed out, "which would make you a threat. I am the spirit of vengeance. I cannot be threatened by mortal power. You sure about that?" The question hung between them. Simple, direct, carrying no hostility, no challenge. Just genuine curiosity about whether the Spectre was certain his divine authority would protect him from whatever Yogiri's power actually was. The Spectre considered his options. He could attempt to judge Yogiri guilty and pass sentence. But guilty of what? Existing in a way that made others uncomfortable, possessing power he hadn't asked for, defending himself when attacked. He could attempt to imprison or banish Yogiri for the greater good, accepting that the action would trigger whatever response the boy's power generated. The Spectre had withstood the assault of gods, had walked through the fires of hell itself, had endured attacks that would unmake planets. But something in his divine awareness whispered caution, something that recognized in Yogiri's power not an attack to be withstood, but a condition to be met. And conditions, unlike attacks, didn't care about durability or resistance. Within the merged consciousness that was Dr. Fate, Jim Corrigan spoke to the Spectre as he had so many times before. "This isn't evil," Jim said, his human perspective cutting through divine certainty. "This is what comes after judgment." "Explain," the Spectre demanded. "You judge, you punish, you enforce cosmic law. But what happens when judgment itself becomes the threat? When the act of rendering verdict is an imposition that triggers response? Judgment cannot be wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it might not apply here." Jim's decades as a cop, as a man who dealt with situations that defied simple categories, informed his words. "Look at what we know. Kid hasn't hurt anyone. Hasn't threatened anyone who didn't threaten him first. Hasn't tried to use his power for anything except survival. What exactly are you going to judge him guilty of?" The Spectre was silent, processing this. His purpose was clear: punish evil, protect reality, enforce divine law. But Yogiri wasn't evil, wasn't attacking reality. And the only law he violated was the law of existing in a way that made sense to cosmic authorities. "He represents a threat through mere existence," the Spectre said. "So does Superman. So do I. So does anyone with power beyond mortal limits." Jim's voice carried weight. "The question isn't whether he's powerful. It's whether he's using that power wrongly. And so far, he isn't." "So far," the Spectre repeated. "But the potential remains. The potential for misuse exists in everyone, even you." That struck deep. The Spectre had in his long history made mistakes, had passed judgments he later reconsidered, had been manipulated, deceived, had acted on incomplete information. Divine authority didn't guarantee perfect wisdom, and if even the Spectre could err, what right did he have to preemptively punish someone for errors not yet committed? The Spectre's eyes dimmed slightly, the blaze of judgment banking to thoughtful observation. "You argue for mercy. I argue for perspective," Jim said. "For recognizing when we're out of our depth. The specter turned his full attention back to Yogiri, who had picked up his cards again, organizing them by suit, waiting with that same patient calm that had characterized his entire presence in this universe. "I cannot judge you," the specter announced, his voice carrying across multiple planes. "Not because you resist judgment, but because judgment requires jurisdiction. And jurisdiction requires the authority to enforce verdict." Yogiri looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means that attempting to enforce judgment upon you would require me to impose my will, to make you subject to divine law, to override your autonomous existence." The specter's form seemed to solidify, becoming more Jim Corrigan and less abstract embodiment of vengeance. "And that imposition would constitute a threat?" "Yeah," Yogiri said simply. "I could attempt it regardless. Test whether my divine authority supersedes your defensive response." "You could?" "But I will not." The specter's voice carried finality. "Because I have learned across millennia of judgment to recognize when certainty becomes hubris, and I am not certain I would survive the attempt." In the watchtower, the assembled heroes processed what they'd just heard. The specter, powered by the presence itself, had just admitted he wasn't certain he could overcome a teenage boy's automatic defense. "Is he retreating?" Flash asked. "He's acknowledging limitation," Wonder Woman said quietly. "There's a difference." The specter stepped back, not in fear, but in recognition. "You are not evil. You are not guilty of crimes that demand punishment. You are simply something that exists beyond the framework that allows me to function." "So what happens now?" Yogiri asked. "Now I report to the League that you represent no immediate threat, provided no one attempts to threaten you." The specter's eyes blazed briefly. "And I will make clear to all cosmic authorities that you are to be left alone. Not because we cannot act against you, but because the cost of discovering whether we can is too high." "Thanks, I guess." The specter turned to leave, paused. "One question. If I had attempted to imprison you, if I had made myself a threat in your perception, what would have happened?" Yogiri considered this. "Honestly, I don't know. You're pretty powerful. Maybe nothing. Maybe it would have worked." "But you don't believe that?" "No," Yogiri admitted. "I don't think it would have worked. I think you would have just stopped, like everything else that tries." The specter nodded slowly. "Then I made the correct choice." He began to fade, reality reasserting itself as his presence withdrew. The sounds of Metropolis returned, the wind picked up. The sky lightened to its normal color. Just before he vanished completely, Jim Corrigan's voice spoke one last time, human and weary. "Kid, I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen threats that would break worlds evil, that would corrupt gods. You're not that, but you're something none of us know how to handle. So do us all a favor and try to get home soon, okay?" "I'm trying," Yogiri said. Then the specter was gone, leaving only fading echoes of divine power and the lingering sense that something fundamental had just shifted in the cosmic order. Superman descended slowly, landing near, but not too close to Yogiri. That was the specter, empowered by God himself. And he just admitted he couldn't judge you. He seemed nice enough for someone threatening to imprison me. He was testing you, trying to understand what we're dealing with. And Superman looked at this boy, this impossible contradiction, sitting in a field playing cards, and tried to find words for what they'd all just witnessed. And he concluded, you're beyond his authority, which means you're beyond anyone's authority. Yogiri shrugged. I just want to go home. I know. We're working on it. Superman paused. But until we figure that out, I need you to understand something. We've exhausted our options. Heroes couldn't interact with you safely. Magic couldn't analyze you. Judgment couldn't classify you. We have nowhere left to escalate. Is that bad? It means if something goes wrong, we have no response, no contingency. We're trusting entirely in your restraint. Nothing's going to go wrong, Yogiri said. As long as nobody tries anything. And if someone does, if there's an accident, a misunderstanding, someone who doesn't know better. Yogiri was quiet for a moment. Then I guess you'd better make sure everyone knows to leave me alone. It wasn't a threat. It was just a statement of fact, delivered with the same calm patience Yogiri had shown since arriving. But it carried weight nonetheless. Superman nodded slowly. We will. I promise you that. He lifted off, leaving Yogiri to his solitude once more. In the watchtower, the League gathered for what everyone knew would be a difficult conversation. We have to accept it, Batman said without preamble. We cannot contain him. We cannot judge him. We cannot even properly analyze him. All we can do is monitor and ensure no one provokes him. That's not a solution, Green Lantern said. That's a delay. It's the only option available, Wonder Diana countered. Unless someone has a suggestion for an authority higher than the Spectre, silence answered her. Then we maintain vigil, Superman said. We keep other heroes away. We ensure no one interprets his presence as a threat to be eliminated. And we hope that whatever brought him here eventually sends him home. And if it doesn't? Flash asked. No one had an answer for that. In the field, Yogiri shuffled his cards again. The sun was setting on another day in a universe not his own. Somewhere in a reality he couldn't reach, his life continued without him. Friends wondering where he'd gone. Teachers marking him absent. The normal world spinning on, not particularly concerned with his absence. It always worked out eventually. He'd learned to trust in that, if nothing else. He dealt another hand of solitaire, working through the familiar patterns, finding comfort in the simple logic of cards and suits and building in sequence. Behind him, cosmic authorities withdrew. Before him, unknown futures waited. Around him, a universe that couldn't quite figure out where to put him continued its vast, incomprehensible operations. And Yogiri waited patient, as stone playing his game beneath unfamiliar stars. The escalation had reached its limit. From heroes to order to judgment, each tier had attempted to understand, classify, contain. Each had discovered the same fundamental truth: you cannot impose authority on something that exists as the end of imposition itself. The universe would have to learn to accommodate him, or learn to leave him alone. Either way, Yogiri would keep waiting. He was very good at it. End Act 4. Word count 3, 847 words. 3 more days passed in uneasy equilibrium. The Justice League maintained their distance. Other heroes received warnings through official channels. Anomalous entity in Metropolis vicinity, non-hostile but unpredictable, do not engage. The message carried weight. When Superman himself advised caution, people listened. Yogiri continued his routine. Cards in the morning, walks to the convenience store, quiet observation of a world that wasn't his. He'd settled into the rhythm of waiting, that patient acceptance that came from too much experience with situations beyond his control. But in the spaces between moments in the realm where cosmic awareness touched the edges of omniscience, something else stirred. The Book of Destiny did not exist in any conventional sense. It was not kept in a library, not guarded in a vault. It simply was had always been, would always be a record of everything that had occurred was occurring and would occur within the boundaries of DC's reality. Every choice made, every consequence borne, every branch of possibility that split from every decision, all documented in pages that existed beyond pages, in text that predated language itself. The book had recorded Superman's first flight, Batman's formative tragedy, the rise of the Justice League and their countless battles against impossible odds. It had seen universes born and die, had witnessed the rewriting of reality itself, had observed without judgment as the multiverse collapsed and reformed. And now it attempted to record Yogiri Takatou. The attempt began as all records began, with simple observation. The book perceived the boy sitting in the field, noted his physical presence, his biological functions, his surface thoughts, and casual patience. Then it reached deeper, as it did with all beings attempting to write the complete truth of his existence. Origins and destiny. The path that had led him here and the paths that would lead him away. The page remained blank. Remained, not empty, blank. As if the book was offering space for text that declined to appear. The book tried different approaches. It attempted to record Yogiri's past, the events and choices that had shaped him. The text began to form characters, appearing in languages older than writing. Then the words faded, not erased, but simply choosing not to remain. Like trying to write on water the information briefly present before dispersing into nothing. The Book of Destiny had never encountered this before. It had recorded beings who existed outside time entities that predated creation, abstract concepts wearing flesh. All of it had been documented with perfect fidelity, but Yogiri Takatou resisted documentation not through power or concealment, but through simple categorical refusal. The book could perceive him, could observe him, could not record him. In the hidden places where cosmic forces observed reality's deepest functions, this failure registered as significant. The Book of Destiny was more than record. It was authorization. It documented what was permitted to exist, what was allowed to occur within the framework of sanctioned reality. When it couldn't record something, the implications cascaded upward through layers of cosmic bureaucracy that most beings never knew existed. Kent Nelson felt it first, a ripple through the mystical awareness he maintained even when not wearing the helm of fate. He reached for Nabu. "Something's wrong," he said. The book attempts to incorporate the anomaly. Nabu replied, his consciousness touching the same disturbance. It cannot. What happens when the Book of Destiny fails to record something? In theory, nothing. The book observes and documents. It does not judge or enforce. And in practice, Nabu's pause carried weight. No one knows. The book has never failed before. In the Watchtower, Batman's most sensitive instruments registered a fluctuation in the fundamental constants that governed reality. Not dangerous, not aggressive, just present like a question the universe was asking itself. "Are we seeing this?" he asked. Superman nodded his enhanced perceptions, picking up the disturbance. "Something's trying to, I don't know, define him, categorize him." Wonder Woman's divine awareness touched the edge of what was happening. The Book of Destiny. It's attempting to write Yogiri into the cosmic record. "Can it?" Flash asked. They watched the instruments, watched reality itself struggle with the simple act of acknowledging Yogiri's existence in its deepest ledgers. Watched it fail. The book tried one final approach. Rather than attempting to record Yogiri's past or future, it simply tried to note his present. A basic entry: this person exists in this place, at this time. The page accepted the notation. For a moment, text appeared clear and certain. Then beneath it, different words formed. Not added by the book, not written by any cosmic authority, simply appearing as if reality itself felt the need to append a footnote. This ending requires no authorization. The text remained stark and simple. Not a threat, not a proclamation, just a statement of fact delivered with the same patient certainty that Yogiri carried in his every action. The Book of Destiny, faced with an entry that contradicted its fundamental purpose, made a choice. It kept the original notation, Yogiri exists, and kept the addendum. Both truths coexisting in uncomfortable paradox. A being existed within reality who did not require reality's permission to exist. The implications rippled outward. In the Rock of Eternity, Nabu felt the cosmic orders shift, slightly accommodating this new truth. In the Watchtower, instruments registered the universe, updating its own foundational code. On Oa, the guardians of the universe paused in their eternal deliberations, sensing the change. On Apocalypse, Darkseid's awareness touched the disturbance and filed it away for future consideration. In realms beyond conventional space, beings of vast power and terrible knowledge noted the anomaly and chose wisely not to investigate. The universe learned to make room. Batman pulled up the readings, analyzing what the instruments had captured. The cosmic framework just adjusted, like it decided the fight wasn't worth it. Or recognized it couldn't win, Wonder Woman said quietly. Superman looked at the data, at the clear evidence that reality itself had chosen accommodation over conflict. We need to tell him. Tell him what? Green Lantern asked. That the universe just gave up trying to understand him. That he's officially beyond any authority we can call on. Superman stood. That we're trusting in his word, in his character, because we have nothing else. He flew to the field where Yogiri sat, cards spread before him, in another attempt to solve an unsolvable pattern. The boy looked up as Superman landed. Something happened, Superman said. Something cosmic. The universe just tried to record you. Write you into the fundamental ledger of existence. Did it work? Yogiri asked. Partially. It acknowledged you exist, but it couldn't record anything else. Couldn't write your story, couldn't document your past or future. Superman paused. And somehow it accepted that. The universe just decided you don't need its permission. Yogiri considered this. Is that bad? I don't know. But it means we've run out of escalations. There's nothing beyond this. No higher authority, no greater power to appeal to. Just you and your promise that you won't misuse what you are. I won't, Yogiri said simply. I believe you. Superman meant it. But I need you to understand the position we're in. If you're wrong about yourself, if you make a mistake, there's no one who can stop you. No backup plan, no fail-safe. There never was, Yogiri pointed out. You just didn't know it yet. The truth of that hit hard. From the moment Yogiri arrived, any security they thought they had was illusion. The tests, the escalations, the increasingly powerful authorities they'd called upon, all of it pointless if Yogiri had ever decided to be a threat. They'd been trusting him from the beginning. They just hadn't realized it. How long do you think you'll be here? Superman asked. Yogiri shrugged. However long it takes. These things usually resolve themselves. Something will happen, some incident or accident, and I'll end up bouncing back to my own world. That's how it usually works. And in the meantime, I'll wait. Try not to cause problems. Yogiri picked up his cards. I'm good at waiting. Superman nodded slowly. We'll make sure you have what you need. Food shelter if you want it, and we'll ensure no one bothers you. Thanks. Superman lifted off, leaving Yogiri to his game. In the watchtower, he delivered the final assessment. We're done, he said. No more tests, no more authorities. We maintain observation, we provide support if he requests it, and we trust that his character is as genuine as it appears. That's a lot of trust to place in someone we barely know, Green Lantern said. We don't have a choice, Batman replied. The universe itself just acknowledged it can't constrain him. Our trust is irrelevant. He could end any of us at any moment if he perceived us as threats. The only thing keeping us safe is his restraint. Then we better make sure we don't give him reason to see us differently, Wonder Woman said. The meeting ended. Protocols were updated. Warnings remained in place. Life continued, the universe adapting to accommodate an existence it couldn't fully process. And in a field outside Metropolis, Yogiri Takatou played his endless game of solitaire, waiting with infinite patience for reality to sort itself out and send him home. The cosmic authorities had tested him. The universe had acknowledged him. And in the end, all of it learned the same lesson the Justice League had learned. Some things exist outside permission. Some conditions require no authorization, and some endings come whether reality approves or not. The boy in the field drew another card, placed it carefully, and waited. End Act 5, word, count 1, 687 words. 2 weeks after Yogiri Takatou appeared in a field outside Metropolis, he vanished just as quietly. No dramatic departure, no cosmic event. He simply wasn't there one morning when the surveillance drones made their routine pass. The cards he'd been playing with sat in a neat stack held down by a rock. A note underneath written in careful English on a page torn from a convenience store receipt. Thanks for not making this worse than it had to be. Yogiri. Superman found it during his morning patrol. He read it twice, then filed it in the Watchtower archives. Another impossible event cataloged and stored. Another reminder that the universe contained things beyond their ability to fully understand. Batman compiled the final report over the following days, synthesizing observations from multiple sources into something approaching coherent analysis. The document would be classified at the highest level, distributed only to those who needed to understand what had occurred. His summary was brief. Subject appeared without warning. Demonstrated power inconsistent with physical appearance. Multiple escalating attempts to classify, contain, or judge subject failed. Subject departed on own terms. Threat assessment unknown. Recommended response to future encounters, extreme caution and non-engagement. In the spaces where such things were discussed among beings who measured power in abstract terms and viewed reality as something malleable, Yogiri Takatou became a cautionary tale. Not a villain defeated, not a hero celebrated. Simply an existence that had passed through DC's reality and left it fundamentally unchanged, save for the knowledge that some things existed beyond permission. The monitors updated their records, adding new classification protocols for entities that defied standard measurement. The phrase termination condition entered cosmic vocabulary shorthand for powers that operated as consequence rather than action. Dr. Fate incorporated the lesson into his understanding of order. Order required structure, but structure could not encompass everything. Some things existed in the gaps, the spaces between definitions. Wisdom lay in recognizing those gaps rather than attempting to fill them. The Spectre. In those rare moments when Jim Corrigan's consciousness rose to full awareness within their merged existence reflected on the encounter. He'd spent lifetimes judging threats, measuring evil, determining guilt. Yogiri had been none of those things. Just a boy who wanted to go home carrying a power he hadn't asked for and using it only as necessary. It reminded Jim of something he'd learned as a cop, back before divine vengeance had claimed him. Sometimes the most dangerous people weren't the ones who wanted to hurt you. They were the ones who simply couldn't be stopped if they decided you were a problem. The difference was intent, character, the choice to restrain power when restraint wasn't forced. Yogiri Takatou had made that choice every day for 2 weeks. Had sat in a field playing cards, waiting patiently while cosmic authorities debated his existence. Had answered questions honestly. Had set clear boundaries and maintained them without aggression. That restraint mattered, maybe more than the power itself. In the Bat Cave, Batman ran simulations. What-if scenarios, contingency planning for threats that might never materialize. He modeled Yogiri returning, modeled him arriving hostile instead of patient modeled situations where his power triggered accidentally. Every simulation ended the same way. No effective response, no successful containment, no victory condition. The only viable strategy was the one they'd stumbled into through necessity. Don't make him see you as a threat. Simple, obvious, completely dependent on factors outside their control. Batman hated it. But hatred didn't change reality. Wonder Woman stood in the Watchtower observation deck, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in the infinite expanse of the multiverse, Yogiri had returned to his normal life. Back to school, to friends, to whatever mundane concerns occupied a teenage boy, between incidents of interdimensional displacement. She wondered if he thought about his time here, if it registered as significant or just another delay in his strange, interrupted life. Probably the latter. From his perspective, this had been routine, an inconvenience, nothing more. That casual acceptance of the impossible said more about his life than any cosmic assessment could. Flash had tried to map the futures again after Yogiri left, checking if the timeline had returned to normal. It had mostly. The 2 weeks Yogiri had spent in their reality existed as a strange eddy in the probability stream futures that had failed to branch choices that had led to abrupt stops. But the timeline had healed. Reality was resilient. It accommodated the impossible and moved on. Green Lantern filed his report with the Guardians, who processed the information with their typical emotionless efficiency. They added Yogiri Takatou to their database of entities, requiring special protocols. The entry was marked with the highest caution level, accompanied by a simple directive: observe only, do not engage. The Guardians had existed for billions of years. They'd seen the universe birth and die and birth again. They knew when to fight and when to acknowledge that some battles couldn't be won. This was the latter. Superman returned to the field one last time before it was cleared for normal use. Stood where Yogiri had sat looking at the city skyline in the distance. Tried to imagine spending 2 weeks in this spot, waiting patiently for forces beyond your control to resolve themselves. The patience required. The trust in eventual resolution. The acceptance that some things couldn't be rushed or forced. He picked up the deck of cards Yogiri had left behind. Bicycle brand red back's edges worn from use. He shuffled them, once felt the familiar weight and texture. These were the cards Yogiri had played with for 2 weeks. Solitaire over and over. A game you played against yourself, testing probability and choice, within strict rules. Maybe that said something about how Yogiri viewed his power. A game with clear rules played honestly, waiting for the right pattern to emerge. Or maybe they were just cards. Superman pocketed them. A memento. A reminder that power without wisdom was dangerous, but power with patience was something else entirely. He flew back to Metropolis, back to the endless work of protecting a world that contained wonders and terrors in equal measure. Back to the certainty that tomorrow would bring new threats, new challenges, new impossible situations requiring impossible solutions. But he flew with new understanding. Power could be measured. It could be tested, analyzed, compared. Heroes did that constantly, assessing threats and determining responses. But some power existed outside measurement. Existed as condition rather than force, as consequence rather than action. And those powers couldn't be fought or contained or overcome. They could only be accommodated or avoided. The Justice League had learned that lesson. The cosmic authorities had learned it. The universe itself had learned it, updating its deepest records to acknowledge an existence that required no authorization. And somewhere in a universe adjacent to theirs, but forever separate, Yogiri Takatou had returned to his normal life. Would attend school. Would deal with bullies and homework and all the mundane concerns of teenage existence. Until someone else tried to kill him, tried to control him, tried to solve the problem of his existence through force or cunning or cosmic authority. And then patiently and without malice, that threat would end. Because some things didn't need permission to exist. Some powers didn't require authorization to function. And some endings came regardless of whether reality approved. The boy had been patient, honest, restrained. But beneath that patience lay absolute certainty. And certainty, in the end, was the most dangerous power of all. The field outside Metropolis was cleared, marked for redevelopment. The surveillance was quietly discontinued. The protocols remained in place, filed away against the possibility of return. Life continued. The universe spun on. And in the archives of the Justice League, the Monitors, the Guardians, and the Book of Destiny itself, a simple truth was recorded. Yogiri Takatou existed outside the scale. Not by defeating it, not by transcending it, simply by being something the scale couldn't measure. The question had been asked, what if Yogiri Takatou entered DC's power scale? The answer documented across 2 weeks of escalating attempts at classification. The scale broke before he did. Not through violence, not through conflict. Through the simple, patient refusal to fit within frameworks that demanded his compliance. Power could be measured. Authority could be enforced. But endings required no permission. And some conditions simply were, regardless of what cosmic law had to say about it. The story ended not with victory or defeat, but with accommodation. The universe learned to make room, and Yogiri Takatou went home. Patient, unchanged, still waiting as he always had been for the next impossible situation to resolve itself. Still carrying a power that no one fully understood. Still choosing day after day not to misuse it. That choice mattered. In the end, it was the only thing that did.